Wrokdown.
The year was 1978. The venue was the Prospect Hill Hotel, that wonderful little gig up in Kew with the pole right in the middle of the stage that we used to all dance around. If you were there, you were probably watching Stockley C. Mason, and today with me I have Glyn Mason and Mr. Sam C.
Wendy.
Hey boys.
Wendy, how are you?
Hi, Dom.
Very good, very
Excellent.
good. Excellent to see you guys. Actually, it was only the other day, but
It was.
Yeah, it was, in fact.
all of those sort of venues, it only seems like the other day to us. However, before you were Stockley C. Mason, I've got a list here of the bands that you were in before Stockley C. Mason, and I must admit, my head span a bit. There was Sherbet.
Guilty.
You were in Sherbet.
Yeah. I was in the first lineup of that. I was Garth before Garth was Garth.
Does Garth know this?
He does, and he's never let me forget
He
it.
never let you forget it.
No.
The Flying Circus, Fraternity, Ariel, John Farnham Band, Chain, Goanna, Black Sorrows. Is there anyone you haven't worked with?
A few, usually the successful ones.
Yeah.
Wendy and the Rockets. I never got to work
Yeah.
with that band.
Yeah, we never got there.
I had to audition my boys very carefully,
Yeah.
and you were always busy.
No, there you go.
So listen, guys, I know that you were both overseas before Stockley C. Mason formed. Mm-hmm. You were in England.
Yeah, well, I arrived here in '69 with a band from New Zealand called the Rebels, previously Larry's Rebels, and they'd been here quite a bit in the sort of halcyon days of Aussie rock, and they were highly successful, really, and a lot of Kiwi bands were coming back and forward. So anyway, I came here. Larry got, if I can say this, shall we say, went on a small journey for a while, taken on board by the local constabulary. So I took his place, and we came over. And after about a year, we folded, and I joined Chain. And again for about a year in that band, and then I went overseas just on my own because, lack of responsibilities or anything. And came back and sort of went into subsequent things. But yeah, a couple of trips overseas in that period of time.
And you'd been overseas as well, Sam, with Chris. Is that right?
No, actually I went overseas with Flying Circus. I guess we were a real, I call us ostrophobes, because we were playing sort of American music. We'd had a few hits with bubblegum tunes, which they still play occasionally on the radio, and you go, wow, that was that era of bubblegum. And so our audience here never came to see the band. These girls would come and see us and see these ugly guys playing country rock and go, we don't want that, we want the Pink guys. They wanted pop. So we immediately, the band won the Battle of the Sounds before I joined it. I hooked in, got a free trip to America, and then we ended up working in Canada because of immigration. And
They didn't want him back here.
true. And basically, I was overseas for about 7 or 8 years after that, with a little stint in Adelaide with Fraternity. But Australia was pretty much the way to sort of survive, was to get a really good band here and then get the hell out.
Yeah, I must admit that that sort of was everyone's ideal, was to get happening and then get out. Basically, I think that was our idea of surviving.
Yeah,
You had to break into a bigger market.
Indeed. Well, I think even now, you know, I mean, Australia's not a big enough market. Don't take me literally, but I mean, it's not really big enough to survive as an artist. You need one other, whether it's Japan or whether it's Zululand, it doesn't matter, but you need to not be here all the time to just keep people
survive.
fresh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so I to pick up the story, I came back, I'd had 7 winters in the Northern Hemisphere, and they're the pits. And by that point, I'd started working with Chris Stockley, who was in the Dingoes when I met him. And we came back on a tour. The band we're in died in the bum, and we decided to form a band. But we thought we needed the golden throat, and that's where Glyn came in.
So did you have him in mind?
Makes a nice cup of tea. What?
Did you have Glyn in mind specifically, or was it
Oh,
a matter
very
of
much
sort
so.
of...
Well, I mean, you know, I hadn't been here for so long. I said, who's good? You know, like who might fit in with the style of music we were going to try and play. And Glyn's roots are pretty much the same as ours.
What was the style?
Well, I mean, it's sort of, I always thought we were kind of rockish with a country tinge, you know, like we love harmonies, we love great country songs.
I remember it had fabulous harmonies.
Yeah, but look, it was very big at the time, if you remember the actual style of music that was, I guess, popular. If you look at sort of the whole West Coast thing out of America, you had the Eagles and Jackson Browne, and the singer-songwriter guys were like doing very well. And here in Australia, if you think about it, you know, you had Stars and Richard Clapton, all of that kind of ilk, you know. Yeah, and they were all doing kind of like pretty well. And I knew Chris anyway, and sort of, I guess out of that, the bands that I'd had, after Ariel, I had a couple of my own things going on. And one of those was a band called the Loose String Band, and like Ray Oliver and a bunch of people like this. And we played predominantly that style of music because that's what I liked, even though it was sort of original based. But and so the flavouring of probably all of us, you know, had that leaning, and Sam especially, because he'd been playing in that style of outfit, right, predominantly. And Chris, you know, from the Dingoes, again, probably an iconic Aussie aspect of that style of music, you know, traditionally Australian and well done. They came from that, and we sort of joined forces, because I was actually really on my own. I was just sort of,
Wrokdown.
So we were getting back to this gorgeous voice. You needed needed the tonsils.
Yeah, look, we had this opportunity to do a gig at the Armidale supporting sports, and it was 3 days hence. We went into a little rehearsal room, and I've never seen a band gel as quickly, or I've never had it myself. But we had 2 days of rehearsals, bang, we're on stage, panicking, of course, but it was just one of those nights, and you just knew that it was
going to
right.
work. Yeah. I was just, with every person that I've been talking to, you know, especially if we're talking about the 60s, 70s, 80s, how lucky we all were that we could work enough to work up our act. You know what I mean? It was like, you can't do it now. If you know, you couldn't have 2 rehearsals and go off now and do what you would consider a really good gig. I mean, you could, but not if it's original stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, it was sort of, when I came back to Australia, it seemed like Valhalla to me, because it had already died out in Canada. But it was like they had a farm system like they have in American sports, where they'd say at the pier in Frankston, they'd have the junior act, and the junior act would either pay to play or they get $100 for the band, but they had to hang around and lift the PA out at the end.
That's right, yeah.
Then they'd have the junior woodchucks, and you know, that was, well, we weren't so junior, but we were woodchucks, where you get paid enough to sort of subsist on. We were, I can't remember what we were making, 150 each a week, or $200.
That was a lot of money.
Well, it was when a lamb chop was 30 cents. Mate. And but anyway, so we could do that, and then whoever would be the top
headline,
line band, like say Richard Clapton or whatever, would make not that much, and then Bill Joseph would pocket the rest. And
Hi, Bill.
no, well, fair enough.
been
I mean,
great.
they promoted it. That's fair enough. But there was a system. Later on, you'd remember that bands like Ozzy Crawl became really huge.
Oh, well,
And they had door deals, and so that kind of disappeared where the up-and-comers, the B-level acts were being subsidised by the promoter in order to keep ticking it over.
yeah.
So that's one reason why the live thing died, I reckon.
Because of door deals.
Well, no, partly, yeah, and also free gigs. Like I remember when I came back, people could go to the Station Hotel on a Tuesday night. I think it was $5, wasn't it? And maybe that's the price of 2 pots, but people seem to be able to have enough to have another dozen pots, and the band could survive on that sort of 2-pot contribution.
But also, I mean, I don't know whether that was the beginning of it, but to me also the whole thing with pokies.
Oh, well, that was a later thing
that
for
totally
sure.
sort of just almost annihilated the live music scene.
Yeah, I guess. And disco, disco. I think was a big
took
thing.
it took its toll, didn't it?
Well, seriously, like when I came back with Ariel from England in 1974, we had a single that Michael had written called Disco Dilemma. And I remember quite vividly channeling and trying to take that around the radio stations. And of course, there were 3 predominant radio stations, one in Sydney, one down here, and one in Adelaide, Catholic-based, shall we say. And Michael and I went round to sort of promote it. And a certain jock just basically sat there in his chair and threw it in the bin in front of us and said, "I'm not going to play that."
Why?
So, well, not only was it, in his eyes, probably a particular offence against the style of music which radio were playing
Playing
quite
at
a
the
lot,
time,
if you
yeah.
remember,
Yeah.
but also Michael had been yanked up in front of the Australian Broadcasting Tribunal for having a song called Chicken Shit on the Ariel first album, of which, of course, was totally against, most things. And I remember Phil Jacobson, and I won't go on too long, but we did a live show up in Sydney. And I remember him saying to Michael, "Whatever you do, don't go on stage and play that song." Well, of course, Michael, being his usual contrary self, decided that we'd do it. And when we came off, Phil said, "I don't think you realise what you've done." And sure enough, they yanked Michael up and basically drew and quartered him. And I think really it was tough for him all those years on.
Really?
Wow.
For all those reasons. I wouldn't play his staff and on
So
we
he's
go.
virtually blackballed.
Yep.
Gee, I had no idea.
Yeah, so anyway, that was an interesting concept about disco. And I mean, probably Sam and myself and many, many musicians at the time were in bands, you inclusive. And a lot of the venues started to change to have the DJ on. And we'd get up to do our live set. And of course, the floor would clear.
Yeah.
I think partly that was, I remember playing at
interesting.
the Croxton Park one night, and we did 2 sets. I think the first set we played, like the audience were kind of polite, they liked it, and then this thunderous bloody bass kicked in, and it was that song "Born to Be Alive." Do you remember? I hated that bloody song. 'Cause what else are you born to be, idiot? Born to be alive. Anyway, we're sitting in the dressing room quaking because the bass is shaking the floor. And I looked out the door, and what I realised was that actually the audience had become the star. They were on the dance floor doing all the sugarloo and all that stuff. Thank you. And and it sort of put it into some perspective, and I really understood why, say, the John Travolta thing was so huge, because it meant that you didn't have to sing, you didn't have to play. As long as you could dance a bit, that was you were doing your thing.
And you couldn't dance?
I'm an extraordinary dancer, you know that?
As we just saw.
No,
And they were just only 2 basic moves.
Wendy, you and I have danced at the Comedy Club.
Well,
Oh no, that was we drank. Sorry.
I danced.
Yes,
You got stuck in elevators and drank.
Yes, I did.
I have to tell a wonderful story. Do you mind?
No, carry right along.
Sam and I did a fabulous show at the Comedy Club with Mr. Shorrock,
Yeah,
Glyn Shorrock,
Glyn Shorrock.
and who were the other fabulous?
Ricky Edwards was
Ricky
the
Edwards,
MD.
fabulous musicians, and the band room was in the basement. And of course, the second act, where Glyn Shorrock and I are ready to go on, and stage managers called the orchestra to come from the pit instead of to go into the pit. Orchestra from the pits. And the boys all came up except Sam, who may have gone to powder your nose or something. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly something.
Anyway, cut a long story short, the elevator got stuck and there was only this much of Sam's head visible to us. And we'd rung the elevator company and they said, we'll get there as soon as we can. Well, 30 minutes later, they still hadn't arrived. However, we'd passed you through about 10 straight vodkas because, well, it was nerve-wracking. We'll take a short break and be back very soon with Sam and Glyn.
Wrokdown.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. With me today I have the wonderful Glyn Mason and the astonishing dancer, Mr. Sam C.
Thank you.
Boys, the last couple of years you've been playing together again, or has it been longer than the last couple of years?
Oh, I suppose 4 now, isn't it?
That close?
We're actually at a party at Lindsay Fields, a mutual friend of ours, and Glyn had just donated half his house in Sydney to his ex-wife, and had decided to move back to Melbourne. And we're having a kind of a welcome back night, wasn't it? And I always take guitars, and we pulled out the guitars, and 4 hours later, we looked over at each other and how good is this? You know, we have that way of playing together. But
The Partners.
The Partners.
And this is the second album that the Partners have out?
Well, it's actually the first Partners one. Our publisher said to us he thought if we were going to move into America, it would be good to have a brand. So having established something of a beachhead here with our names, we decided we'd adopt the Partners as our moniker.
When I Googled you, I read that this is a medieval term.
It is.
Please explain.
Oh, well, the Partners were these reprobates who used to make a living by going around to villages and selling papal indulgences. So people could be making love to farm animals, and the partner would go, well, here's 10 sovereigns, Your Honour, and they would give you an indulgence, which meant that it was okay to make love to the farm animal, and so they sort of made a good living. And by the way, most of the Partners were making love to the farm animals. You have a look at
That's
the
no
royal...
reflection on ourselves, of course.
No, but you have a look at the royal
Do you ever
family.
wonder how musicians' brains actually...
Well, hang on. Look, can we build a wall in here? Like a
How
certain,
Sam's brain.
a certain brain.
Have you seen any photos of Camilla lately? It explains a lot. Anyway, moving on from that. So we got the Partners. And
we've got the name straight now. We know what you actually do for a living.
Yeah. God, I mean, it'd be a fabulous job, wouldn't it? I reckon. I mean, I have this thing, you know, you watch those movies about knights of the realm, and you imagine how much they stank inside the armour. All those people, it's sort of romanticised. It's so funny.
Oh, the Knights of the Partners.
Yeah. Mind you, Glyn and I are very clean
Let's
living.
hope there's slightly more finesse in this.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, look, the wonderful thing is that, of course, if you go to our website, which is www.wrokdown.com, there will be a link to your website.
Which is partners.com.au.
Would you please thank Glyn Mason and Sam C, and they're going to go and set up to do a little live act for us.
Lovely to see you, Wendy.
What's
Thanks.
the live act? Partners?
I'm not dancing and there's no farm animals involved.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
You know, sometimes I wonder, in between this rain and the thunder, just what among this crowd that I stand alone. So say a prayer for us all. Say a prayer will we stand up for. And if you really care, you can say a prayer. Now the only spaces in this neon land are the ones between ourselves